All right, guys, welcome back. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Hopefully everybody is well. Today's video is a short one, but it's one that is necessary for some people. I want everybody to know that not everybody starts by being really good at the game. I started Valorant without any prior experience in CS or any of those movement-like shooters. I played Overwatch and that was it. So I had some decent aim, but I didn't understand strafing in the slightest. So we all have some areas that we need to work on. And these are the tips that I wish I had when I first started Valorant. And as a whole, just understanding how a lot of the movement works now that I've kind of gotten better and I've been playing in higher elos, now that I've kind of like gone past that initial stage. So these are tips for anybody that wants to sort of hear some of those news of like, oh, I've been doing this right, I need to keep doing this and practicing this, or I've been doing this wrong and maybe I can work on it. Okay, so as always, we're going to be talking a little bit about counterstrafing and whether it's mandatory and understanding a little bit more about counterstrafing. Then we'll talk a little bit about how you should be moving. And last but not least, some tips that you can incorporate and some drills you can use in your games to sort of get better at moving. Okay, not all of these things are going to become second nature immediately. You got to remember that there's a lot of practice involved. I had a lot of time. I was in college at the time, so I had plenty of time when I was playing, and you know it was 2020, so I was playing a lot during that period. So there is a little bit of a time requirement when it comes to movement, but hopefully these tips can help you get better. Let's start with the first one. And before we even get started, I do need to mention that I am taking in more students, taking in new students, okay, of any rank range. If you're someone that is struggling, I am your guy, okay? So if you really want to get some advice as to why you're losing your games or something you can do to improve mechanically, this is a good place for you to start. Feel free to join the Discord channel and give that a try. Okay, but let's get started with understanding counterstrafing. Is it mandatory? Let's just get right to the bottom of it. It is not. CS as a game has so much inertia, or that is, there's some extra push once you move somewhere that you need to use counterstrafing. And I mean need, okay? You need to use counterstrafing as a way to stop. It's a really good way to use movement, and it's a really advanced mechanic that higher elo players will incorporate in their gameplay to be harder to shoot and to be more effective at shooting. Counterstrafing in Valorant is not required. However, it is necessary if you want to get higher. If you want to be Radiant, you need to know about counterstrafing. It's better for movement if you know how to counterstrafe. It's better for reacting to maybe, for example, somebody swinging you all of a sudden. It's good for those types of things. However, when you are looking at it directly, the reason that I have to state this is because a lot of players focus so hard on their counterstrafing that they don't know that because of the inertia, or rather the movement that's going to be left over when you let go of a key, is so small, there's like almost no inertia in the game, they might actually move the opposite key and they will get that little bit of movement error that will screw up their shot. Sometimes I'll hear advice like, make sure that you're always moving so you're harder to hit. The harder to hit you are, the better you are at having more chances to shoot the opponent. And this is true. However, because they're focusing so much on that counterstrafing mechanic, they don't think about their crosshair placement, which is a huge component, by the way, of getting kills in higher elos, right? Crosshair placement needs to be good. And overall, just making sure your micro flicks are down. So don't overthink it, okay? Let's say, for example, that I am swinging to the right, just letting go of the key is enough. So let's just kind of like move on from this area right here so you guys can understand it further. So how do you do this? You need to learn to use your movement to aim for you, okay? This is the part that I struggle with the most, simply because I never understood how people were swinging and how people were moving a lot of that time. If you've seen this clip before, I've kind of used it to sort of demonstrate how you can sort of use your crosshair and you can put it within the wall and kind of prepare for fights, right? Moving into the wall and then out. You can use this, but you can also use the second part. Notice at the beginning here, I'm just moving one key. I am not actually counterstrafing between those portions of my movement. I'm actually just pressing A. And what's happening is, while I'm using my A key to fight, I'm making sure that I have the right amount of space to land where I need to take my shot. Okay, this is where the portion of you learning your movement is going to matter. This is going to be a little bit more anecdotal. This is something I heard. I didn't watch this interview, but I remember hearing that when Ye was in Optic, he is one of the more, I would say, methodical aimers that exists in Valorant, right? You can kind of love him or hate him, but he is very methodical when he aims. His coach, according to this story, made him practice his crosshair placement and his movement in every map. And he would take hours just going through every single map and try to clear as many angles as possible. Now, if you don't have the time or you just want to play more games, well, this is for you. Make sure that when you lose your fight, you kind of pay attention to how you die. If you have clipping software, this is a good place to learn. Pay attention to how much movement you're adding in your fight. Make sure that you're using your movement to actually get the fight in, rather than using your movement to dodge bullets and then counter-strafing as a way to sort of land that shot. Okay? When you're using that to your advantage, you'll be much better off in your fights. Now, this is not the best solution. It is still a band-aid solution. A lot of aim does come into play when you're playing higher up. But if you're somewhere in Plat or Diamond, maybe even Ascendant, this is enough. Okay, this is enough to get you into Immortal. This is enough to get you into that little area right there. Okay, so make sure that when you're peeking as well, notice how over here, again, I'm peeking and I'm not using my W key. You can use your W key sometimes to get into a good position or when you need to scale, but most of the time you're only going to be using your A or D keys to take the fight. So make sure that you're gauging how much space you need. If you watch a Radiant player of any kind, pay attention to how they stop. They always know where to stop. And if they do happen to get caught off guard, that is because of a counter strafe. And that's the only time that you might need it. So don't focus too much on it. Instead, practice stopping where you need to. Okay, you can practice what I'm showing right here. Maybe you want to practice unbind. This is a good place to start. Okay, but what about the part that I mentioned about becoming harder to hit? There is some truth to it, and this is where I kind of need to tackle it really quickly. There are situations where you should be looking at the situation you're in. For example, if I'm playing Deagles, I'm more likely to win the fight with a rifle or a Spectre or something like that by moving more than somebody that is more likely to require a single bullet to basically land on the head, right? If you're fighting those single target characters that just basically are dealing with, you know, maybe for example using the Deagle or the Guardian, right? Maybe they're using a pistol of some kind. Using your movement or using that to your advantage is a good way to look at the context of the fight that you're taking and using that to your advantage. Okay, so over here, for example, this is not appropriate in the slightest, but notice how these guys are not really using an appropriate gun to deal with me, so I can just try to run and gun them. I'm not even trying to stop at all, right? It's not the best example of movement, right? But it's enough to get the kills. And sometimes it's all you really need to guarantee a fight. Notice how I'm moving, I'm crouching, I'm sort of becoming harder to hit, right? I'm just trying to be a nuisance. And this is a really good place for you to sort of learn. Look at the context of the fight. So just because you're moving all over the place, you might kind of lose control there. Maybe standing still might make you lose control because someone can swing you and you won't have a fight to really take there, right? So make sure you're paying attention. Play around natural cover if you're someone that is new to this. So for example, notice how I'm switching between this piece of natural cover to that piece of natural cover. And then from there, I'm switching over to maybe, for example, over here, right? I'm sticking around natural cover and then move to this wall, right? Like stick around natural cover if you're still kind of getting your bearings on what type of movement to use, because it's better to swing an opponent and be near cover than be out in the open and maybe not knowing what to do. Okay, know what guns you can use, know what guns are really good with movement, right? Like the Spectre, the Stinger, right? You can kind of mess around with those, kind of figure that out, right? But this is a great way to kind of start engaging and disengaging, right? If you know that there's a fight here. I'm going to be mentioning one other tip that is not necessarily in the slides for disengaging, but it's going to kind of tack on to this next point. So what do you practice? Okay. If I want to become harder to hit and you want to use rifles, this is the technique that I suggest a lot of players try to learn. Okay, like I mentioned, I am not the greatest player. Okay, I did not start with Counter-Strike. This is something that even I myself am working on. Okay, this is something that you're going to be spending the majority of your time playing, and you're going to notice that you're going to see an immediate win part of your games, right, starting to come up just simply because you're using this technique. Okay, and it goes as follows. When you swing an opponent using the technique where you just, let's say, for example, go A, and you find an opponent, and let's say you take a shot and you miss, right? Let's say that happens. When you swing an opponent, the way you're supposed to play it, and that I see a lot of high elo players in Radiant, I believe Aspaz uses this technique as well. If you're someone that likes to refer to players and you look at their content, you swing, you look at an opponent, you tap, okay? And then once you take that first shot, it can do a lot of things. It can hit their body, which tags them, allowing you to take the second shot, or it can kill them. If you get the kill and there's multiple opponents that you can deal with, then you can move again and kind of use that. Or if you tap them and it's not necessarily a hit, or it's not necessarily a tag, or you did tag them, you can then move right after and then burst. So you swing, tap, and then move left or right depending, and then you can use that to sort of confirm a kill. This is going to be the most difficult part of your journey if you're still starting out with movement, but it is one of the most important, okay? This is going to help you become harder to hit. It's going to give you some sort of structure when you're trying to move, and it's going to give you an idea of how a lot of the fights are taken. So try to go into the range, tap, and then move a little bit, right? And then just sort of strafe a little, right? Figure it out, see what's going on, get the feel for your gun. After that, you can use that to your advantage. Using the same technique, however, you can use it like I was talking about over here, where you can use movement and going from cover to cover. Let's say, for example, I was right here in the open and I wanted to get out of this area in danger. And I was using, for example, a rifle. What you can do is you can use this exact same technique, but instead of doing what most players do, which is left to right, side to side fights, you can use this to instead move in the direction that you find favorable. So for example, let's say that I want to go to the right because that's where my natural cover is. I take a fight and then I burst, move to the right, burst, move to the right, burst until I'm out of cover. And then you can just do a little fade away once you need to cover those last few steps and just kind of spray and try to run and gun them. I don't know. That you can kind of do. This one is personal preference if you want to run and gun, but you can use that idea of, tap right, 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 tap left, 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 left. It throws people off, okay? Even at the highest elos. I've seen it multiple times. I've seen that people fall for it, okay? And I'm talking like Immortal 3 plus, okay? Like I've seen this, I've seen it in streams, I've seen it in my own games. It's something that happens. So with that out of the way, let's call it here. If you guys have any questions about movement, please let me know. Please put any comments in regards to some of the content you guys have been watching recently. And if you guys want to see more demos alongside the videos, like I did in the last video, if that is the case, I would like to know. But with that out of the way, we're pretty much done here. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to start the question period for anybody here that is more curious about movement.